welcome you all to the Microsoft Ignite Learning Zone. I'm very happy to hand it over to Jen Looper in just a moment to go through this session on becoming a green developer. Before we do begin, I'd just like to remind you of the digital code of conduct and just ask that you all be kind to each other as well as kind to our fantastic speaker, Jen. And Jen, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Sorry for jumping the gun there. I get really excited. I'm here with my branded outfit and my plant here to talk about going green a little bit with you all today. So I'm really excited to be here at Ignite. The title of my talk is Becoming a Green Developer. My name is Jen Looper. I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft. So let's go green. On the agenda today, I'd like to talk a little bit about a somewhat new field, which is called sustainable software development. And then I'd like to invite you to code a browser extension together with me. So this is going to be a little experimental. We're just going to go ahead and code something together. If you don't finish it, don't worry. I'll give you all the links. Everything I do is always open source, so you can go ahead and finish it up on your own free time. So what is sustainable software development? Well, it's an emerging discipline at the intersection of climate science, good practices in software development and architecture, software architecture, understanding how electricity markets work, and thinking a little bit strategically about hardware and data center design. And I would invite you to take a look at principles.green, which is a site created by my colleague Asim, who is head of the green team here in cloud advocacy at Microsoft. And he has given you some really, there are 8 principles that you can take a look at. I'm not going to go over them here because we're in the interest of keeping up our time. But he outlines here on principles.green that the goals of a sustainable software engineer are basically to follow some recommendations. And these recommendations are this: that you can make decisions that have meaningful impact on the carbon impact of your applications by following these 8 recommendations. And they have to do with, being aware of the performance of your application, being aware of its carbon footprint and its electrical usage, and all of the things that need to go into building good and sustainable software. So my question to you is, can we build a carbon-friendly app? What would that even look like? And engineers tend to think, man, I can just architecture my way out of a problem. I can build something and it's going to solve a thing. I can build the greatest electric car and that's going to solve this thing. And that's an awesome attitude, and it's how we as engineers always tend to think. But maybe we should think about, should we build a greenfielded new website or a new mobile app or a new desktop app? Because there's a little thing that always nags in the back of my mind as I build new and interesting things, is that building fresh web assets that are always online tend to consume unnecessary energy to keep them live. So if we're continually building new, we're kind of disregarding the 3 principles that we grew up with, which is reduce, reuse, and recycle, right? We're not really reducing, we're kind of building new, so we're not really recycling, and we're certainly not reusing. There is a solution to, making sure that your new assets are carbon friendly, and that is you might host it in the cloud. Cloud hosting can help you spin up assets when they're requested and needed. You could also have an offline first strategy that can keep your energy requests low and kind of under control. So that might be one solution when you absolutely have to build something new. But my question is, maybe we don't right now need to build something new. Maybe a better solution is to build something that we're not actually going to bring to production. We're not going to bring it live. We're going to build something that's hosted locally. And maybe it can answer several of the principles on principles.green. And here are 4 of those principles. You can build applications that are carbon efficient. You can build applications that are energy efficient. You can reduce the amount of data and the distance it must travel across the network. And then instead of shaping supply to meet demand, you can try shaping demand to match the supply. So what I thought we could do today together is to build a browser extension. And we can host it locally. We don't really have to release it to the market because only we're going to use it. And it's going to be something that's going to help us make greener decisions. And it'll satisfy, as a matter of fact, 4 of the 8 principles on principles.green. So what would a green browser extension look like? So fun fact, I had never tried to make a browser extension before I decided to do this talk, and I had so much fun doing it that I sort of got, got the religion of the browser extensions. So I'm kind of enthusiastic about these. They're really cool and fun. I described it to my daughter and she said she would use it, so that must be a win, right? So this green browser extension is going to do a couple things. It's going to help you make educated decisions to manage your personal energy usage choices. So it's going to be querying an API, and we'll talk a little bit about that API and how it can test the and just give you information about your current region's energy usage and where the energy is being sourced from to help you make some decisions on your own on whether you want to do something pretty carbon intense like run your dryer. It's going to be hosted locally. It's going to be right in your browser, so it's not going to be living particularly in the internet. It's just going to make some queries to an API. So it's going to be called ad hoc as well. Some browser extensions are pinging all the time to get information from the internet. Well, this one is not. You could make it so that it would be pinging on like an hourly interval, but this one is not. We're just going to make it so that every time you open it, it's going to query the API and give you some information. And we're going to build it with vanilla JavaScript, so there really is very little overhead. There's not a lot of files, there's no frameworks, there's just a couple styles, a little bit of JavaScript, and boom, you got a browser extension. So it was really fun to kind of craft this thing for you. I just want to put in a little caveat here that we have to be a little bit careful. Not every browser extension is created equal. My colleague sent me this readout of one of his, I think it's his last pass extension, which seems to have some kind of memory leak, or it's pinging a lot of different services all the time. And it's pretty memory intensive and pretty electrical. It uses a lot of electricity because it's constantly pinging and it's constantly live. So not all browser extensions are created equal. And just the fact that we're making a browser extension doesn't automatically mean that we're making a more green kind of application. But as long as you kind of keep in mind, all of the energy usage that goes into this kind of application, it's worth it. So my mantra for today is the greenest app is actually the one you don't build. So this is our little carbon trigger, and I input an API key from the API that we're going to query. I input my region. I'm in Boston, so my region is US-NEISO. That's New England ISO. I can't remember what it stands for, and it tells me the carbon usage and the fossil fuel percentage, so kind of where that where the energy is being sourced from, because it would be nicer if you have more renewables serving your energy needs. So it gives you that information too. It's a very useful little API. So the API we're going to use is the CO2 signal API. It's going to change the color of that icon. I'll show you the icon like this, based on the carbon intensity in your region. And you're going to get a quick readout of your region's carbon status. And based on this knowledge, you can make good decisions. You can save power by boosting your own knowledge, because knowledge is power, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and build this browser extension. So I'm just going to pop up Edge. And mine is already loaded. So when you're loading up browser extensions to test on Edge, you click Load Unpacked, and then it will, let me see if I can reload it. And it will just load up your built files. So here, so you can see here my usage. Can you see this actually? I hope so.
Hey, Jen, we actually cannot see your Edge browser.
I just realized that. Yes. Let me go back to Teams. My apologies. I have to reshare. I have to reshare my screen. I was sharing only one piece of it. So I'm gonna share can I share my entire screen? Yeah. Okay. Can you see let me open up Edge and make sure that you can see. Can you see Edge?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just sharing the PowerPoint. Sorry about that. So anyway, so here is the little browser extension in the extensions panel in Edge. And you can see that Boston is not doing so great right now. So we have 56.03% of fossil fuels being used to generate the electricity. This carbon usage isn't too bad, but it's still coming up in the red. So there's some logic in the application that's kind of gathering the reading from this API and showing you your usage. So what I'd like to do now is for everyone to start your engines, okay? I'm going to ask you to go ahead I'm going to clone this repo and maybe we can pop it into the chat. So this is on GitHub. Everything's open source. It's on my GitHub. It's carbon-trigger-extension. And I would like you to use the start branch because we're going to follow the bouncing leaves as we go along and build our extension. And then I'm assuming that you have npm already installed. If you don't worry about it. You can always come back and do this later. But navigate to the root of your application once you have this repo cloned and npm install the dependencies. So root npm I. Install those dependencies. I think the only thing you really need is Axios because we're querying an API. And then you can take a look at the files. So there are about 5 important files in a browser extension. The first one is in the dist folder, and it's manifest.json, and this is where you set your defaults. And then there's source. In the source folder, there's index.js, and all of your JavaScript code basically goes in here. And then when you build your extension, you are using this index.html file in the dist folder, along with a background.js file also in the dist folder, and that's where all the background tasks are going. So our icon changes are actually put in that background folder because that's a background task for the extension to pick up. And then the last one that's actually built and compiled is index.js, and that's the built file that you don't touch in the dist folder. So what we're going to do is we're going to tinker around with index.js in source, and we're going to take a look at the background.js file here. All right. And just to talk a little bit about the development process. So you saw on Edge how I had my extensions panel open. Maybe on your Edge browser, you've got a whole bunch of extensions, but it's kind of cool to look at all the different browsers and figure out how you install extensions. I managed to do this and make this thing work in Firefox, Chrome, and Edge. I have no idea what's going on with Safari, but we're just going to let that one lie. So here we are, and you just open up the 3 dots on the far right of your extensions panel in Edge, click extensions, and then you're going to click Load Unpacked and point that open folder area towards the dist folder as you start building. So you have built a copy of your extension, and then you're going to point your extension panel towards that. So that's your development process. So and there's a little bit more I'd like you to do before we get started. I'm asking you to do a lot, so I apologize for that. But you can take a look at the energy map, and there's a link here. So this is the energy map, and this is all related to the co2signal.com API. And on the energy map, you'll see a whole bunch of regions, and you're going to be able to figure out your zone and how your energy usage is going. So we're basically building a browser extension that will replace having to visit this website. So it's a little bit more green. You also are going to grab an API key here. You're going to go to co2signal.com, and it's weird because you actually have to send them your email, but they don't spam you. And the key will be emailed back to you. It's a pretty quick process. So you're going to get a key there. And then you're going to find your zone at this link here. So you go to the api.electricitymap.org and find your zone, or you can just test in Boston. You can do US-NEISO, that's Boston. France is just FR, if you want to try. Fun fact, France is always more green than Boston, probably because they have more renewables. So that's good fun. Okay, now we are ready to go ahead and start coding together. So I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. I'm going to make this smaller. Oops. I'm going to try anyway. Try to make this a little bit smaller. Okay, and then here is my code. So I'm going to go ahead in Visual Studio Code and switch to the start branch. And it looks like this. This is going to break my browser extension because the code is not finished. So I'm not going to open up the browser extension after this. But what you're going to do is you're going to look in the start branch, and you can see I'm on start, and you're going to look for the little leaflets that I put in here. So here's 6 and 4 and 1. And if you don't feel like typing, I also created snippets for you. So the first thing we're going to do together is check if anything is in local storage. We're going to add a check to the init function to see if any API key or region is set in local storage. You're going to use local storage a lot as you go along. So I've put these snippets in here, and you can just type the number 1, and the snippet should pick it up in Visual Studio Code. So no fat finger typing. Okay, that's the first thing. So we're just checking to see if anything is in local storage and picking it up. This is the init function in in source index.js. So go ahead and follow me here. I'll just save it. Okay, let's go to number 2. So in this situation, we're going to manage our local storage inputs. So we're going to go move from init into the setup user function here, which are all asynchronous functions here. It's setting up your user. So what it's doing is it's just saying, we're going to set your local storage according to the input that you're passing me. So I'm just going to type 2. And there we go. So we're taking local storage and setting the item, assuming that in set user, we're getting an API key and a region name passed on down. And then we're doing a couple manipulations here, and then we have to make the initial call. So I'm going to go to 3, and we're going to call display carbon usage. So assuming that we have a browser extension which has a little form, and you put in your region, you put in your API key, and then it's going to go ahead and query that API, and also it's going to set your API key and your region name in local storage so that you can always keep reopening your extension and reusing it as you go along. And then we're going to go ahead and invoke here display carbon usage, passing again the API key and the region name. And we're going to go to display carbon usage. So here's where your Axios call is to query the API. This is the co2signal.com API, passing in your region, passing in your API key. So we're going to go ahead and display that, the information, once the API sends it back, and we're going to give it a little bit of formatting. We're going to round up the carbon intensity that comes back from the API, and we're going to say there's so many grams, and then we're going to give a description. Grams are the CO2 emitted per kilowatt hour. We're also going to display what you saw earlier, which is the fossil fuel text. So grab that fossil fuel percentage, shape it up a little bit, and then say this is the percentage of fossil fuels used to generate electricity. So those are those 2 items that you saw already in the information. Okay, sorry, I didn't make the initial call, and then here we are on displaying the carbon usage, the usage on the carbon source. So here's where you're making that API call and shaping it for your user. The next thing we're going to do is tweak the icon. We're going to go ahead also in source index.js. We're going to look for number 5. So where's number 5? Let's scroll right down here. The first thing in init, we're going to set the icon to be a generic green color, and you might have seen that kind of flashing when it's checking the API. It sets it to green and it checks the API and then gives you a color. So this is kind of interesting because it's using the Chrome runtime, even though we're in Edge. Remember, Edge runs Chromium. So we're going to ask the Chrome runtime to send a little message, and here's where it's going to send it to that background JavaScript file to ask the extension to go ahead and update that icon and first set it to green. And we're going to set it, we're going to calculate the color of the icon based on the carbon intensity. So we're going to go up to number 6, which is right here, and we'll just type 6. Okay, so we're going to say, we're going to let the CO2 be the carbon intensity, and we're going to calculate the color, which is another function here. It could go down a line. Calculate the color of the CO2, calculate the color of the icon based on the CO2 reading that comes back. Number 7, we have to update the icon. Now that we have gathered the response from the API, we're going to go ahead and look for that calculate color function. Where is the calculate color function? It's right here. And we're going to update the icon. So 7, here we go. Ask the Chrome runtime to send a message, again, to update that icon. But here, instead of setting it to green, we're going to set it to the closest color as it figures it out from this array. So I have a scale of carbon readings, I have an array of colors, and we're going to figure out which is the best color to show according to the closest reading of the carbon intensity. Then the last thing we have to do, number 8, is to take a look in dist, in the background file, and we're just going to, and here's where that background process works. So we just set the icon right here. And it's kind of another interesting little process, but it basically sets the icon by drawing the icon. And here's the draw icon function. And this is all happening in the background. I borrowed this idea from the Energy Lollipop extension, which uses the Canvas API to draw a little icon for you, to draw a little circle, and to fill it with the color of your choice. Energy Lollipop is a cool browser extension, but it only works for California. I'm in Boston, so I needed something a little bit different. So that is the code. Let's go ahead and open up a terminal. Oh, I have my terminal open. So I'm going to do npm run build. And that should build. It's going to use Webpack to run this build and build up my extension. Okay, looks like it's succeeded, although there's a couple warnings. So we can go ahead, and I could even remove this extension from Edge, and I can load it unpacked. It's going to open up my dist folder and select it. Okay, you can get some details about it. You can there's information on the background page, what's happening in the background page as well. So here we have that first view, and I would have to add my region name and my API key because I completely refreshed, rebuilt, and renewed the extension. My API key, I'm not going to just display that to the whole world, but you yourself will see this as your first view. Put in your information, and then you should be able to get your reading for your browser extension. So congratulations. Now you know when to run an errand or when to run the dryer. All you have to do is consult your ad hoc browser extension. I keep on talking about running the dryer because I found out this is an incredibly carbon intense activity. So everyone go buy a clothesline, myself included. But maybe it will tell you, you know, I'm thinking I need to run to the store. Well, I'm going to pop my browser extension and it'll tell me, yeah, your region's in the green, go right ahead. This is a good time for it. Great, so in conclusion, remember the greenest web asset is the slimmest one, the one with the least overhead, and the one that is only called ad hoc. This isn't realistic for a lot of applications, but maybe it's realistic for one of the applications that you decide to build. And you just learned how to build a browser extension, which is super cool. As we say in Boston, it's wicked awesome. You built something slim. It helps you make greener decisions. And this is my postcard to you. So thank you so much. Thank you very much for joining me on this journey. And you can always find me on Twitter at Jen Looper or visit my website at jenlooper.com. So thanks so much.
Awesome, and thank you, Jen. I honestly didn't know that my dryer could really be emitting so much carbon, so good to know. Yeah, and I'd love to try out this extension later on. Interesting stuff. So we don't have too many questions, so just a call out to folks to get your questions in the last few minutes here. There was a question earlier on in the session around wanting to know if Visual Studio Code had any tools that help us make green apps. And from what we could see, there wasn't, but I don't know if you might know of anything.
It's a great question. I dug around a little bit for extensions that would help. I think a better bet is to look at your developer tools in your browser, because the dev tools are getting more and more sophisticated, and they're showing more and more information about the energy consumption of the app when it's in your browser. So that's what I've been using. I haven't found a huge amount of green extensions for VS Code, but I really feel like we should build one somehow.
Definitely.
So,
yeah, it does sound like there is a good opportunity there.
Yeah.
All right, I kind of have a personal question, but I'm seeing if anything else is coming in over here. Not yet. So, okay, personal question. So, I mean, you were just showing off how to, you know, kind of build it and run this browser extension app. Do you have any other resources that might be helpful? Like if I wanted to create a similar app to, you know, just be a browser extension, anything that can help me learn how to do that?
Yeah, definitely. So if you go to the GitHub repo, in the README, I put a link to the article that helped me tremendously. It was by an African developer. He made a really cool carbon extension for tracking COVID. And it was really helpful because it's not obvious how to build an extension that will query an API. There's a lot of other kinds of extensions out there, but this one was exactly what I needed, so it was really helpful to me. So that was there's a very good article out there. Sarah Drasner also has a good article on Scotch.io on how to build a browser extension. The cool thing is when you can figure out how to test them all locally, and you bang open all your browsers and you're like, wow, this works. It works again. It still works, you know.
Okay, thank you. I did just grab that link to the Ebola blog where it looks like he's explaining how to make extensions. So I will check that out later, and hopefully someone else finds that useful as well. There was one other question that just came in about is there a way to have a greener CI/CD?
Oh, a greener CI/CD. I think that could really benefit from actually this kind of carbon trigger, because I think that you could run a build when your region is more neutral in its carbon usage. If you could find, I think that it would be cool to hook up some kind of power app or something to, or maybe a GitHub action to query this API and just say, this is not the time, you know, just hold off and wait.
Yeah.
And that would be actually really, I think, a useful thing, because it's all about just good decisions, like finding the best time and the best place to do stuff.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Then a follow-up question is just like any idea about how you could measure the impact of these code decisions? And when you're thinking about just how to be greener, like any way that you can actually measure this?
Yeah, I think your developer tools are your friend. And I think that there's a great VS Code extension that really does need to be built that would say, you're going to put a full screen video in the background of your app. Is that a good decision? Is that what you really want to do? I think what we should do is add on to green principles like the web developers mantra of things that should happen and things that shouldn't happen. There is a sustainability conference coming up next week, so that's something to think about. Maybe we'll get some good ideas from there. This was not a performance talk. I feel like there's plenty more to say about like all the performance tips and tricks that you need to try to slim down your heavy web pages. I'm getting concerned about the weight of frameworks, JavaScript frameworks, and I think we've moved away from very heavy image assets, and we're moving towards, you know, putting things in CDNs and using them there. But I think we need to really start paying attention to the weight of our applications, because they're getting very chubby, you know, and it's an accessibility issue as well, because we need to make sure these all work on 2G mobile, you know, so for as many users as we can. So there's plenty of dovetailing good practices that we really need to be paying attention to.
Great. Okay, let's take one more question and then we will close it out. I think you might be looking at the questions there as well, Jen. Let's see. So let's follow up on the CI/CD. We'll close it out here. We're using artifacts or skipping tests on modules that haven't changed might help with energy usage. Oh, that's not a question. That's just a tip.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yep.
How to read that out loud to see. Okay. Well, then I think with that, I just want to thank you again so much, Jen, for your time. I think we all have learned something new today. So yeah, appreciate you giving this session.
Good fun. Thanks a lot. I'll keep on answering a couple questions here. Get you the link for the conference and stuff like that.